head might be.
It's rolling.
He don't have a lot of hair.
Well, thanks everyone for having me. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come hear about the iron industry. My name is Byron Smail, and I wrote a couple books on the iron industry. My first one was The Iron Furnaces of the Cove in 2023, and I learned about the iron furnaces that were in the Morrison's Cove area of Blair County, and I had a lot of fun doing that, so I decided to look into the rest of Blair County and wrote Blair County Iron, and it's an in-depth book on the history of the iron industry. It talks about how it's done and also each site. And my third book that I wrote last year is actually not about the iron industry, but it's about what came after Blair County, limestone, and Ganister. All the history in Blair County pertains to Huntingdon County. It's all interconnected and related, but this book is about the limestone industry and how we would aid in the steel production in Pittsburgh and Johnstown and Ohio, and a lot of Ganister rock, for refractory bricks and everything. So, but thanks for coming, and we'll get started. Here's my family. Nathaniel, 4 on the bottom. Lucas is 9, Levi's 8, and that's my wife Danielle. And how I got into history was in exploring is basically I have a landscaping business, and I can work all the time in the summertime, and it's hard to get away from work. So when we had our kids, I wanted to come up with some ideas to go out and hang out with them and have fun. And when we were kids, my dad would always take us on hikes and history and adventures, and I decided to start doing like outdoor adventures with the kids, and we go to museums, hiking, history, waterfalls, just fun stuff that doesn't cost a lot of money, and that kind of led me into really, I liked industrial sites, and so it kind of led me into wanting to learn more about history.
Aww.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. This was the very first iron furnace that I've ever been to. This is called the Eliza Furnace in Vintondale. It's on the border of Cambria County and Indiana County. It's said to be it's right in Indiana County, but my dad, he's right there on the right side of the picture. He's 80 years old, and he still likes to come out and do hiking and history, and he took us on adventures when we were kids, and he likes the fact that we go out on adventures with the boys and the family, and he said, why don't you bring the family up to Vintondale and I'll show you an old iron furnace. And I was like, that sounds like fun. So he's like, let's go check out the Eliza Iron Furnace. And when we got there, this is always seen this big stack of rocks. I just was immediately intrigued. I wanted to know what they did there, who worked there, what they did. So I decided to take my families to some more furnaces that I knew of. This is the Greenwood Furnace in Huntingdon County. Beautiful park. I like the fact that there's a state park built around this furnace. And so we went there and learned about it. And then here's another one in Huntingdon County, the Paradise Furnace in Trough Creek. That was a very early furnace. And if Pennsylvania had 231 iron furnaces that operated from the middle 1700s till, probably early 1900s. And to find a furnace standing is rare. There's not many out there. In Blair County, there's only 6 that are still standing, and they're in ruins. They're actually not fallen down, but this one's actually in Huntingdon County. To understand the iron industry, we have to understand how we make iron. And iron ore rock is very common here in the Juniata region. It's very heavy. This is ore rock. Ore rock has lots of metal minerals in it: gold, silver, copper, galena, zinc. This is iron ore. And when you put it in a furnace and smelt it down, we can extract the iron in it and use it to make products. And this is the main ingredient in iron furnace.
So what percent of iron would be in that?
Great question. This is from around Ore Hill, and Ore Hill was known to be the best iron in the nation at the time. Now it had about 70 to 80% iron in it.
Really?
Very good. And I research a lot of iron, and anywhere from anything usable was as low as 20 to 30%, up till 70, 80%. Some of the best iron ore is right here in the Juniata region, Huntingdon, Blair County, and but there's lots of different grades of iron and that's a great question.
Let me ask a question too, Brian?
Yes.
This is something I've always wondered, and I hate to jump forward, but so if they put those ore rocks into the furnace, does
Yes.
the iron just like leak out of them then?
It will smelt. It will ooze out.
Is it
And,
oozing
yeah, it'll
out?
just kind of burn itself out and into a liquid form, like a
Okay.
molten form.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we'll
how
talk
that-
about that here
Okay.
here shortly. Here's another piece, and this is all known as brown hematite. Our area was, and Blair County, we had a lot of limonite, iron ore, and brown hematite. There's a lot of different types of iron ores that I'm not very familiar with in other areas, but in our area we have a lot of brown hematite or fossil ore.
Are
The
there
next-
fossils in that ore?
No, they just call it fossil ore. It's like really heavy iron rock, you know. But this is the next ingredient we need in iron furnace is limestone, and that's very common here in our area. Limestone would be put in with the iron ore to act as a flux. When they were smelting the iron ore, the limestone would pull the impurities out, the no good junk that's in here that's not iron.
Wouldn't that be a nemesis for a landscaper?
What's that?
Limestone?
A nemesis?
Yeah.
What's that?
For you and
We
your
use it
work?
all the time. I mean,
Okay, okay.
many uses for limestone.
Okay.
Here's an old limestone quarry in Altoona that was used for fluxing. What we call fluxing. Flux is something that pulls the impurities out during the smelting process. Another key ingredient that we need to make iron is we needed a heat source. And charcoal was the main heat source from the middle 1700s all the way up until about 1850s. And it was the hardest part of the iron industry. Many men were needed to cut timber around the mountains and everywhere around Blair County, Huntingdon County. They would clear cut all the trees. And it took about a normal average iron furnace at the time took about an acre of trees per day to run a furnace.
Oh.
So they would cut trees. They would haul them to a site which was right around where they were cutting. What you see here is a charcoal pit or charcoal hearth. The men would cut trees and they would make this site. They would clear out all the vegetation. They would rake the leaves off, rake their dirt off, flatten it out. It was usually about a 30 by 30 or a 50 by 50 round area that they would get flat. They would pile up the firewood like a teepee style, and they would make all sorts of, I can't really explain it perfectly, but look, they had a chimney there, and they would cover it with leaves and then dirt, and they would set the pits on fire. And the men up here working, they were called colliers. Yeah, their job was to attend to the charcoal pits to make sure the charcoal was burning right. Because if they messed up on their job and a batch of charcoal was ruined, that was a big deal. So they had to get this charcoal to the furnace round the clock. A couple men, two colliers were known to watch about a dozen of these charcoal pits at a time burning. They were up in the mountains 7 days a week watching. It was a real dirty job, dangerous job. So
I bet many of us, I mean, I have an ancestor that was a collier. I bet many of us do.
it's a very, very
Yeah.
common trade. Here's the iron furnace, and this is kind of what a typical iron furnace would look like. Right in the center you have the stone blast furnace. That's what you'll see today if you see anything. They have the charging structure. They always built this into a hillside. They wanted to be able to load from the top. This was known as the charging structure. It'd be a tunnel or like a ramp. And a lot of times it looked like a big barn, but it would be built overhead the furnace. These men right here, they would load the iron ore, the charcoal, and the limestone into the top of the furnace. And notice on the right, there's a water wheel. You needed water, a local source of water. You needed a hillside. You needed a good source of iron ore. You needed a source of limestone. And you needed to kind of figure transportation. All these were figured into the early iron masters and prospectors where they were going to build these sites. If they didn't build it in the right spot, it'd be a bust. It would go bankrupt. So they needed good running water, not a river typically because they would flood, but a stream or a creek or just a smaller source of water. But they could run this water wheel. The water wheel would the water raceway would get directed to the water wheel. The water wheel would turn. It would pump bellows. The bellows would pump air into that pipe and on the fire. To get a furnace hot, you need a fan. You need something blowing and on the fire. So they would get this fire up to 22 to 3,000 degrees.
Wow.
It needed to be that hot to smelt the iron out of here. And these had to run every day of the week. They barely ever shut them down unless they needed to clean or take a little break. They would run every day of the week. When the iron was ready, and these men down here, they were known as guttermen. They would pull the tap, and liquid iron would come out into these castings. Here's a bed of sand. This is known as the casting house. This is where the men would let the iron come out. Bed of sand, metal castings. The liquid iron would flow out in here, and it would go into these side troughs. The nickname pig iron came around because this would look like a mama pig with her piglets drinking off mama. So it got the nickname pig iron. Yeah. Another thing here is notice this pipe coming out here.
Yeah.
This is slag. That's the waste that comes out. I've heard different things. I heard some furnaces extracted the slag last. Some of them came out earlier. But I was heard that the liquid slag, the waste product, would float to the top. The iron would come out first. But I'm not 100% certain on that as well. But
What
slag,
did they do with the slag? Could it be used as compost?
actually, yeah, it could be used as fill. But a lot of times it's
Or
just
fill?
Yeah, a lot of times it's just waste around an iron furnace site. This is charcoal slag. It's always glass-like. If you find this around an industrial site, that's what it is. You can find mountains of slag around an industrial site. You can even find it along riverbeds from it floating down the river. But so yeah, that's the waste product, and they would just dump it. Take it and dump it somewhere around the site, and it would just be waste. So.
Oh, no.
And I assume the glass is from the silica.
I'm not 100% sure, but the charcoal had something to do with it turning into more of like a glass-like slag. And we'll talk about different types of slag later when we switch to coke. But here's the inside of a furnace. It's usually a stone furnace, limestone or sandstone or mountain stone with. Inside would be a layer of refractory fire brick that they'd always wrap the furnaces with brick. And here's the pipe that would blow in on the air. Or they'll blow the air in on the fire. Here's just some slag that I found along a river. You can find it around industrial sites. Okay, so now that we talked about a little bit of iron production, we'll talk about some of the furnaces in Blair County. This is the very first iron furnace in Blair County. It's actually in Catherine Township, Mount Etna. And Huntingdon County came first. A lot of the iron furnaces were coming from Lancaster, Lebanon County, coming east to west. And so Huntingdon County was building up a lot of furnaces. And then people started coming to Blair County. So a lot of the iron industry was working it this way. But this was Mount Etna. It was built by a partnership, Messrs. Cannon, Stewart, and Moore, in 1809, and there was lots of iron ore around Catherine Township, and they found the spot to build it. And the biggest problem they had from 1809 to 1820 when they switched hands was they sold all the iron to Pittsburgh. We were building up Pittsburgh, Philly, some of these bigger areas. They were buying our pig iron, and they had to take the iron ore, the pig iron, by pack horses and wagons over the Allegheny Mountains. That was about a 2-week trip. It was dangerous. It just took a long time. Eventually, Henry S. Spang would buy this furnace operation in 1820, and he would build they would call it an iron plantation. It was known to be a community. These furnaces brought the communities together and attracted workers. So even in Huntingdon County, with all the blast furnaces, a lot of these areas were started by these furnaces. It was really the first large business industry, and it would attract lots of workers, families, and they would have what they needed. They'd have farms, they'd have a doctor, a post office, they'd have a store, and usually the iron master was the head of everything. So they were kind of looked at as like the king almost, But this is a tenant house over at Mount Etna. Here's the old store building, which is a beautiful home.
Mm-hmm.
This, real quick, I'll back up here. Henry S. Spang, we got a lot of success when the Juniata Canal came from outside of Harrisburg to Huntingdon to Blair County. The canal would come right to Mount Etna around 1832, and that made the pig iron transportation to Pittsburgh in 4 days. So they really started to flourish when the canal came in, and the canal and the Allegheny Portage Railroad. Once we started getting good transportation, the iron industry really started to pick up, and this is canoe furnace, also known as soap fat furnace. This was built by Henry S. Spang that owned Mount Etna, about a mile from Mount Etna and Catherine Township and the border of Frankstown Township. It was built in 1838 and operated till 1848. It only operated 10 years, but it was a circular style furnace, and they got its nickname soap fat furnace because the workers always ate fatty bacon, and they said it tasted like soap fat.
Is that still standing?
It is. It's fallen down, but here it is. Here it is today. It's like all the front fell off. And it's a beautiful site. It's one of my favorites to walk around. It's actually on private property, but the owners are really cool. My cousin's daughter Emma did paintings of this furnace. It's just really, really beautiful. Here's the site today. It's called Point View. It's in Catherine Township, on the border of Catherine and Frankstown Township. This is actually the Little Juniata River, and that is, in that picture, it's been dammed, and that was the Raystown Lake at the time. The Little Juniata River was a lake. They dammed it, and that was known as, they built all these luxury homes up on top of the hill. This is Point View. This is the mountain coming down 22 towards Hollidaysburg, and those are luxury homes that are still there today, but the developer made this a really luxury home. A lot of people would come and enjoy their time on the lake. They had a big ice house and a lot of recreation, and they even had steamboats on the Little Juniata, which today it's like, that's really hard to imagine.
Yeah, it is.
So Byron, try to tell us exactly kind of where that, because Catherine Township would be up towards like Yellow Spring.
Yes,
In
yeah.
that area.
If you come down 22 towards Hollidaysburg, you're gonna come up.
Down Short Mountain.
Yeah, you come down Short Mountain. Right at the bottom of Short Mountain, you make a left.
Yeah.
That takes you into Williamsburg.
Yep.
Right when you come around the bend, past the state building where they have the plow trucks, Point View is right there on the left.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
houses up on the hill
okay,
that are still
okay,
there
okay,
today.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Most
yeah,
of those houses are still there.
Yeah,
That
they're there.
circular house is still there.
they're still beautiful. Yeah, really nice.
Okay, gotcha.
But they kind of found another reason after the iron industry was done. They developed it.
Where was the dam?
The dam was all the way towards Gannister and Williamsburg, and I guess the flood of '36 wiped it out. I think that's what happened. There was a really bad flood and it wiped it out. This is Juniata Furnace in Williamsburg. It's Juniata Furnace, also known as the Williamsburg Furnace. John Neff was the iron master. He was from Huntingdon County, and he started out as a farmer. He came to Williamsburg, opened up a grist mill, a general mercantile business, got into river arcing. River arcing was a really big, was an important industry. They would float materials down the Juniata River and the Little Juniata. They would river arc materials, eventually he would eventually get into the iron industry. He built the Juniata Furnace in 1856, and it would operate till 1876. And all the iron they made here, they would ship it to the Altoona Railroad, and they were building up the Altoona Curve, the locomotives, the biggest railroad in the world at the time. So they really helped Altoona Railroad. This is a really cool picture because it's an original picture of the men working. Emma did a drawing of that one too.
Oh.
Yeah, you can see the little boy with his father.
Yeah.
You know, it's really cool. And this one's neat. If you notice there, the pipe goes up here to run the air. It's different. This one's not built into an embankment either. They had some kind of raised. They would raise the materials up somehow. This is where Martin's gas station in Williamsburg. This is where the Juniata Furnace at. Today. Just to look what it looks like today. Kind of sat a little bit further down to the right, but this is actually kind of the exact site, right off to the right of the Martin's gas station. The Rails to Trails is right there. The Rails to Trails comes right by there. This is John Neff. He was the iron master. This is John Neff's house. This is the Spring House in Williamsburg. If you guys ever go through Piney Creek, that was his house he built. The iron masters they wanted to build the biggest houses to kind of showcase their wealth. They wanted to kind of look good, So that was his house. I think they all competed with each other. This is one of my favorites in Blair County. This is the Springfield Furnace. This was built by the incredible Royer family. Anyone heard of the Royers? Royer Mansion. They were incredible story with the Royers. They built this furnace in 1815, and it ran all the way till 1882. 3 generations of Royers would run, and they were a master class in the iron industry. They had They owned everything. They had iron mine, some of the best iron mines in Blair County. At the Springfield mines, they had limestone quarrying. They had 2 forges. The iron masters didn't make money until they sold their pig iron to forges or foundries. That's when they would make products and sell them, and that's when the iron master got its money. They owned a forge called Cove Forge, and they also owned a forge at Franklin Forge, where they made their own iron products. This is what it looks like today. This is what it looked like then.
Oh, Jiminy Crickets.
This is probably the best picture of an iron furnace operation in America right now.
Wow.
It's an awesome picture. This is what a site would look like then. You got your stone blast furnace right here, which is the picture before. You got your charging room, which is a barn. There's an overhead charging where they loaded the iron ore. This is where the water wheel sat inside this barn. See the pipe?
Yeah.
Here's the casting house. This is where the men would pull out the iron ore and the slag. They would dump slag all along here. They would just bring it out of the furnace and just dump it. And here's the men and their teamsters. They would haul the wagons with the charcoal, iron ore. And look at this tunnelway here. They have a tunnel there. They go under, I don't know, that's pretty neat. And here's like some of the communities. This is an awesome picture. You see dinky carts up here
Yeah.
with like iron ore. It's really neat.
Oh, wow.
That's one of my favorite pictures. And here's their water wheel at Springfield furnace. This was probably sometime in the 1910s or 1920s. Here's the historic Royer Mansion, one of the only historic sites in Blair County of the iron industry. It's a beautiful home that you can go see and tour. Here's Samuel Royer. He was second generation. He was the iron master. His dad was there was Daniel and John Royer, and this was Samuel. He was the second generation, and the third generation was kind of ran between multiple family members. But they were very well liked. The village was named Springfield, but they eventually changed it to Royer, and that's what it is today, the village of Royer. Emma did a really good job on this picture.
Definitely. Yeah.
This is Dr. Peter Schoenberger. He got a start here in Huntingdon County. He's known as the Iron King, the supposed wealthiest iron master in the nation. He was the Andrew Carnegie of the time. Now there's some arguments, there are some other big players too, but he was one of the biggest. And his dad was a German Hessian soldier that came here and fought in the Revolutionary War. And George, had iron making skills back in Europe and wherever, across the, Germany or wherever they came from. I think it was Germany. But he bought a furnace here in Huntingdon, the Huntingdon furnace. You guys ever see that one? It's a beautiful iron furnace. And
Is that by your school there in that area?
yes, absolutely. Yep, and I think he bought it with a partner, but it switched hands a few times. But George Schoenberger would become the owner, and his son Peter Schoenberger was going to school to be a doctor, and he went through school to be a doctor, and decided that he wanted to follow his father in his footsteps in the iron industry. He must have seen something, must have seen a chance, and he decided to just get right in the iron industry. He didn't become a doctor, and he ended up taking over the iron furnace in Huntingdon. He had some forge, and then he would set his sights on the Cove, and he would come to the Cove, and he would build Rebecca Furnace in 1817. This operated until 1884. This picture is probably from 1920, 1930. It's pretty much all dismantled and fallen down. But this was his very first iron furnace he built in Morrison's Cove. A big reason why a big motivation to why I started working on these furnaces. I was talking to a coworker, Pat, that works with me. I was telling about the furnaces I was looking like in Greenwood and Trough Creek, and he told me that he heard that there was an iron master in the Cove that had a bunch of furnaces and named them after the women in his life, the daughters, the aunts, his wife, sisters, and it became tradition for iron masters to name the furnaces after the women in their lives. And when I heard about that, I was like, I gotta check this out. That's basically what started my beginning. But yeah, he would name this Rebecca Furnace. This is where it sits today. There's nothing there anymore. And I always kind of wanted to, I'm like, where did the stones go? What did they do? What did they repurpose them with? But this is, yeah, there's nothing there but slag. I can find slag Slag all around the site, so you know you're in an iron furnace site if you find slag. That's a key indicator. And this is the Iron Master's home. It's a Rebecca furnace, and it's so nice. It's incredibly, it's beautiful. It's called Oak Manor, and this is Rebecca. Actually, interesting. Peter Schoenberger's daughter Rebecca didn't live here. His other daughter Elizabeth came over here. That had a furnace named after her, but she moved over here and married Edward Lytle. Edward Lytle would be Peter Schoenberger's son-in-law, and the Lytles would run the furnace for his, father-in-law for Peter Schoenberger. But this is known as Oak Manor.
Just east of Martinsburg?
Yeah, it's,
Rebecca Furnace
yeah,
Road?
Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And remember how I said about wonder where all the stones went? I was in the library at Roaring Spring. It's amazing what you can find reading books at the library. You find some of the coolest things. I was reading some books, trying to learn about some of the stuff, and I found out that some of the stones from Rebecca Furnace were repurposed at a foundation in Martinsburg. And this is at a guy named Frank Leidy house in Martinsburg. It's beside the subway. That's his foundation rock. And I walked up to his house and knocked on the door and said, I'm like, do you mind if I go see your basement? He looked at me and I laughed. I explained, I'm just looking for some Rebecca Furnace stone. Their family was so into it. They thought it was awesome. Some of the other stones went to the Sportsman's Club in Martinsburg for their fireplace. So just kind of neat to see those stones repurposed. This is an old ore hole, one of Peter Schoenberg's ore hole. It's filled in with trees and brush. This was the Millerstown Mines. That is one of large section an area they mined iron ore for the furnace. This is known as the ore hole in Henrietta. This is a big part of the industry is the iron ore, and Henrietta was an iron ore village. They discovered iron ore here in abundance, and Peter Schoenberger owned all this property. And after Peter Schoenberger died in 1854, around the 1860s, they started prospecting back here looking for iron. And his family, before Peter Schoenberger died, he developed the Cambria Iron Company, which is huge iron industry that operated up until, the middle 1900s. But this was an area they mined iron ore, and this is an open pit mine. They started from the surface, they got the iron ore, and they would just keep digging down, and they would get the iron ore. And they would lay tracks, dinky tracks, and they would have dinky carts, and the men would just basically pick up the rock, put it in, and it was a lot of hard work. They would get the iron ore and take it straight to the furnaces, and a lot of times they would even sell it to other, I think this is cool, all these men up here just sitting there. Yeah. Today they'd be on their cell phones. This is an ore hole at the Iron Masters Country Club. This area is what they called Ore Hill. Peter Schoenberger owned this site as well. This was what they said was the best iron ore rock in the nation, and where Peter Schoenberger struck it rich. The iron ore had some manganese in it, and that was a really great quality iron ore. It smelted amazing, and it was very tough, very strong quality iron ore that the military wanted it for weapons and cannons, and they Ore Hill was sending out so much iron ore to not only local furnaces but all along Pennsylvania. This is on the 13th green at Iron Masters.
Excuse me, why is the water green?
They put some kind of chemicals in their tablets or something. They kind of make it. They kind of put a dye in it. So it's a lot of pond people, they put like some kind of something in it just to keep it colored.
Like
So,
New York and St. Patrick's Day.
I guess so. Yeah. Wonder how many golf balls are down in there. Here's early on, iron ore mining was really hard. They used mules and wagons, picks, shovels, dynamite, and they did everything by hand. Eventually, iron ore got a little easier. They got the railroad involved, steam-powered locomotives, pulling dinky carts, steam shovels, eventually different kinds of mining tools. But this is probably around 1880s, 1890s, where that picture was taken. They have their own steam shovel. Here's some of their men at their small steam-powered locomotives. They even had, at these iron ore places, they had iron ore washers. They would take the iron ore out and wash it, clean it, and they would send it to the furnace nice and clean. So
Oh
a
my.
lot of these large mining places have their own ore washer setups.
Huh.
These iron ore mining sites were huge. I mean, they had thousands of men working at these iron mines. And right here in Blair County, I'm working on my last book right now on iron mining exclusively. And right here in Blair County, there's hundreds of iron mining locations. Huntingdon County has hundreds and hundreds of locations. They're everywhere. They used to mine and extract iron ore, and they would go all over the nation. That's why we're in the historic Juniata Iron District. We have a lot of iron ore in our area. Other areas around us don't. So this was a key area to building America. So you don't realize how huge it was. This is Steam Pump Dam. This would supply the water to the ore washers at Ore Hill. They would pump this water a mile through a pipe about 3,600 feet using a steam pump. And that is still there today. It's pretty cool. It's neat what they did to make everything work. Here's some iron ore rock. This is the site of Elizabeth Furnace. It's sat in Woodbury, Bedford County, in the Cove. And there's nothing there today, but this furnace was operated by Peter Schoenberger from 1829 till 1844. And you can find slag all around the site. And eventually they would tear down Elizabeth Furnace. Peter Schoenberger was taking his iron ore, getting it around Woodbury and eventually Ore Hill. And when they found all the good iron ore in Ore Hill, they said, to heck with this, let's move this to Bloomfield, which is right on the other side of Dunnings Mountain in Bedford County. It's really close. It's just right on the border of Bedford and Blair in the Cove. But they would rebuild the furnace here at Bloomfield, and it would operate till 1888. Here's some massive slag piles
Yeah.
at Bloomfield. They're really, really large.
Wow.
Okay, this is Martha Furnace. This is really neat. This was built in 1838 by Peter Schoenberger, and it sits right in McKee Gap. McKee Gap is right outside Roaring Spring coming into the Cove. It's like the doorway of the Cove. It's where you're entering through the mountains and going into the Cove. And it was built right along the railroad. And this is a really modern furnace. It's kind of a shift in the industry. They started doing hot blast instead of cold blast, where they had a water wheel. Right here is a hot blast system, and they had a series of mechanical steam boilers that would recycle the hot air off the fire, and that would make steam power, and then they would use the steam power to make air to blow it on the fire. So at that point, you didn't need running water anymore. So you could build these furnaces closer to a key transportation area. Also, at this point, around middle 1840s, 1850s, we started running out of trees. Everyone cleared the trees. What do we do now? We're out of trees. You know, so they developed coke, and this is coke, and it's what it is coal, and they take the coal to these beehive ovens, and they would burn they would take some of the impurities out of the coal, and for about 10 to 15 hours, they would make this product called coke. And this coke was a game changer in the iron industry, and it was so much more efficient. They could make it so fast. They could make it, and this is when iron ore really started booming. So this is an important time in the iron industry where things go from small furnaces and forges to building up their local communities to building up the infrastructure in America. Mount Etna was doing 50 tons of iron per week. Mount Etna, that's about maybe 7 tons a week. Martha Furnace was doing 250 tons a week. So you can see that big shift, and it goes up from there. So this is really key to the iron industry. This operated until 1890, the longest lasting furnace in the Cove.
Time out for a
Hey,
minute.
Byron,
Yes.
can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So, like, the same idea behind charcoal and trees
Yes,
is with coal and coke.
yes,
Burning
absolutely.
out the impurities.
It's the new efficient.
That's what I was trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
it's the new heating source.
Yeah.
So,
Instead
And coke
of
is
using wood, you're using coal. But
Yes.
you still burn out the impurities. They have pure like carbon. Right?
yes, absolutely.
Coke is the coal, what charcoal is the wood.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
that's what I was
Absolutely.
trying to figure out.
And it was a huge game changer
Doesn't take
today.
the SAT now.
Today it's still in operation for the steel industry.
What kind of coal is in this area?
That's a great question. I'm not huge on coal, but I'm really studying the Tussey Mountain right now, the Tussey Mountain Huntingdon Broadtop area. I'm working on my next publication, and I'm really spending a lot of time with understanding the iron ore in Tussey Mountain. And there's a man out there that owned the section furnace. His name was Robert Powell. He was a huge player in anthracite coal. Anthracite coal was introduced to the market when Robert Powell was around. He started pushing anthracite coal. And from my understanding, I don't know much about the coal industry, but I know he was getting into anthracite, and they would use that to make the coke. And he ended up introducing anthracite into the industry. And I'll talk about that more in my next book, but that's something I'm looking forward to. But yeah, so
I think the broad top is semi-bituminous.
yes, I've seen
So
that.
it's,
So it's
sort of
half and half.
Half and half. Okay, great.
So it burns really clean and hot,
Okay.
but not as messy as the all bituminous.
Did they have anthracite up there too, or is it mostly?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
that's more eastern.
Okay.
Like the Wilkes-Barre Sky area has
Okay,
anthracite.
that makes sense to me, because right now, researching Robert Powell, he had a lot of iron ore, he had a lot of coal mines in Clearfield County and outside of the region, so maybe he found anthracite somewhere, but he had 10,000 men working for him, Robert Powell. And he had lots of mines, coal mines and Broadtop area, Huntington area. So I'm working on that right now, so I'm learning more and more about that. This is the site today. If you can see the mountain range, how it comes down, this is McKee Gap, but you can see the mountain in this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually, where the furnace sat, directly behind the PennDOT building in McKee Gap. So, this is
Oh,
Emma's
yeah.
painting. Emma's doing stuff now that's like, she's winning huge awards, and her stuff's featured in all across like Pennsylvania and the nation now. She's really, took a big, There's slag piles here behind Terrascape Supply in McKee Gap, and we talked about charcoal slag. This is coke slag, and it's more like grayish, white, more like, if you find a ledge of it, it almost looks like concrete and limestone, but it took a different, it's different than charcoal slag. So I started noticing more like 1840s, 1850s when they switched to coke.
Okay.
The slag piles are more, it's just a little different.
Huh.
This is the pinnacle, the biggest iron furnace in the cove. It's called Rodman. Rodman Furnace 1 and 2. There's 2 furnaces here, one here and one here. Big hot blast, very modern looking. Notice the shape of it, and the it looks a lot different. So this is operated from 1862 till 1871, and they strictly built this furnace to get the best quality iron ore from Ore Hill to make the Rodman cannon during the Civil War. And they were doing 300 tons of iron per week, and they would send the iron to like the Pitt Foundry and some other foundries, and they make the Rodman cannon, which I heard it. There was a naval cannon, and Lieutenant Rodman demanded iron ore from Ore Hill. He actually wanted the government to seize it. He said, "You need to take this." He was a big military weapons maker, and during the Civil War, and he urged the government to take a hold of Ore Hill. That didn't happen, but Peter Schoenberger and Cambria Iron made a ton of money here at Ore Hill. So they were contracted with the government to supply them their iron ore. But something about the iron was so good and strong, and it was ideal for making weapons. This cannon, I think they said, went out of commission in 1908 or something, 1911. Don't know exactly, but it was never fired in battle. It was after the Civil War, there was no conflict, so until World War I. So New Enterprise, Stone and Lime would eventually buy the Rodman Furnace site.
Yeah.
This is the site of Rodman Furnace today. It'd be off to the right, across from New Enterprise and Roaring Spring. I could probably wrap this up in about 15 minutes, if we're on time. Okay. Notice the big slag pile here on the screen. This is a pile of coke slag. It looks like a big ledge of rock or concrete, and that's coke slag. So it just appears to be different. This is known as the Sarah Furnace in Claysburg. This property is owned by Sheets today. This is Peter Schoenberger's mansion. Not here. This is one of the Iron Masters homes that operated it. Behind that site is a bank. Everything's been dismantled, but the furnace sat along this embankment. Here's Peter Schoenberger's mansion. He built this mansion, and right now Sheets is doing a $12 million restoration.
Wow.
And
Oh,
people at
wow.
Claysburg and Sproul are really excited about it, and they're going to use it for business and people coming in to do business with them. But it's going to be a fantastic, undertaking. It's going to be really, really neat.
Or at least they didn't knock it down and put in a
Rudders
gas
was,
station.
Rudders was going to do that.
Yeah.
She stepped in and bought it.
Don't get us started.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, they were going to buy it and
No.
build a Rudders right across the street from the.
Let's not go there.
There's a big Sheets right there in the corner, and Sheets owns property behind there. They have their distribution center, and Rudders was going to come doze it, and Sheets stepped in. I mean, Sheets does a lot of cool things. So, this is Bennington Furnace. It's a really modern hot blast, later ran iron furnace. This is in the very, very close to Cambria County, but it's in Blair County on Sugar Run Road, and you can see here's a village where all the workers lived.
Yeah.
Here's a rail line, a spur line.
Uh-huh.
Look at all the loading areas where they were loading,
Yeah.
bringing the iron ore down. The casting house.
Okay.
Here's the furnace, the hot blast. Here's the stack. Oh, sorry, here's the casting house. And here's the big slag pile. If anyone knows the area, this is known as Sugar Run Road down here.
What were the buildings over to the right at the top?
Right here?
Over
Over here?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe
Okay.
some other houses or supporting structures.
Okay.
How safe was all this?
It was extremely dangerous. The workers were tough, and they died. They died in accidents a lot. This story here at Bennington is really remarkable. They did everything. They were Irish. They came in here. The Irish immigrants, they came in here, really tough men. And they built the Horseshoe Curve. They built the Glitzen tunnels. They had hundreds of coke ovens. They had coal mines here. They had their iron furnaces. They did everything. And it was a huge operation. It's definitely some incredible history. Down at the bottom of Sugar Run Road, you can see this big, massive slag pile. That's huge. So you can tell iron production was getting very big at the time. That's a massive pile of slag.
It just stays the
It
same.
stays. It's not going anywhere.
It's not. No, there's nothing that's gonna change it.
Yeah, when I first drive up Sugar Run Road, before I really started understanding this stuff, I was like, what is that, limestone, or what is that rock formation? I didn't know what it was, and then after a while, once I started figuring out, I realized that's slag pile, and the furnace sat directly above the slag pile. Here's a picture from 1873 on the side view, which is really incredible. Here's the spur line, here's the structures, the slag pile, Sugar Run Road's down here.
And you wouldn't have seen trees.
No,
before.
actually, there's more trees here, but they've been cleared. Like these mountains they've been cleared off pretty good. There's still a few there.
Yeah.
Here's the furnace today. It fell in on itself. It basically just fell in on itself. It's a big stack of rocks, but it's still there.
Huh.
It's definitely neat to explore up there. Here's some coke ovens there. This is what made the coke. And what's neat about Bennington and some of these large industrial sites is they started having their own coal mines, their coke ovens, their iron production. So they did it all. They were one-stop shop. A lot of the furnaces in Huntingdon County, Rock Hill out of Orbizonia. Well, I guess that'd be it. Then further down the Huntingdon Broad Top line, we had the Saxton furnace, we had the Reynoldsburg furnace, and Everett. They did furnaces like this. They did their coke, they did their coal mining, they did everything. So it became like a one-stop shop.
So that's a good question, Byron. So I think of Greenwood furnace and Monroe furnace and
Yes.
Berry and all that. So they were all charcoal.
Charcoal.
Yeah, because you don't see the coke furnaces in
No,
that area.
and it's really interesting. And what's really amazing about Greenwood furnaces, they never switched to coke. I think they tried it for a minute, but they stayed with charcoal all up until I think the 1900s, some early 1900s. Or I visited there last summer and talked with a man down there, Paul Hagley, I think is his name. Yeah, he's so smart. I like talking to him. He was really cool, and he told me that they stay with charcoal, and there was a benefit to that. For some reason, they like their iron ore or their pig iron from the charcoal. The charcoal gave some kind of quality to the iron ore, and they used it in some rail place in Lewistown where they made rails, and they wanted that kind of iron. So This iron that they made at each furnace had to use somewhere. Someone wanted for different grades of iron ore, different charcoal, different limestone. It produced different grades of iron, pig iron. So, and the people that buy the iron ore, they used it for different reasons. Here's Allegheny Furnace in Altoona. This is owned by Eliza Baker. Yep, the Baker Mansion. Here's Eliza Baker. He was known to be a very, in Altoona, he was one of the first industrial leaders in Altoona and really helped build the city. Here's his furnace today, which is in really good shape. It's off to the right. Naturally, that'd be a lot taller, and it's mortared and closed up, but it's actually in really good shape today. It's preserved well. But if you look at that picture today versus what it looked like then, you know, you can see how different it is. Here's the Baker Mansion. This was Eliza Baker's Iron Master home, and this was known to be one of the largest mansions in America. He had supposedly the nicest, most expensive home. He put everything he had into this home. It basically bankrupted him a couple times, but he was really persistent. I would recommend anybody to go check this out on tour. It's really remarkable, and the story is incredible too. This is Lakemont Park area, and if anyone ever seen this area, there's an old pond here at Lakemont Park. That's their old ore hole that they would dig their iron ore. It's a pond at Lakemont now. Beside Lakemont, there's hillsides. This is an old iron mine. It's been pushed shut, but they would go into the mountain to get iron ore along that hillside. They found iron in the hills, and they would tunnel mine. And we talk about a lot of open mining, but middle 1850s, 1860s, they started going underground. They would start tunneling into the mountain and following veins of iron, and they would extract the iron, you know, out of the mountain. Sometimes these veins of iron could be 2 to 3 foot wide to 4 foot wide, sometimes only a foot wide, but a vein of iron would be surrounded by sandstone, slate, shales, or whatever, and they would extract the iron ore, and all the waste, they would just remove it and dump it in spoil piles. They did anything and everything to get this iron ore out of the mountains. It was extremely hard work. And they would collapse, they'd have to shore up the mines, and, you know. There's iron ore found there. He also built Eliza Baker also bought a furnace up in Indiana County. So he did expand a little bit. He also had his own coal mines and coke ovens up towards the Horseshoe Curve.
Is that a water wheel?
Yes, it is. Yep. I'm not sure when that picture was taken, but it was probably the early 1900s, I imagine. This is an area called Blair Furnace in Altoona. It's closer to the rail yards in Altoona, like Juniata section of East Altoona. I didn't have much on this. There's not much on it. But a man named James Entrekin from Huntingdon County. You ever heard of James Entrekin? He was an iron master. He built the Rough and Ready furnace in Huntingdon County. It's actually right at the Shy Beaver boat launch is where that furnace is at. It's not there anymore. They dozed it when they built the boat ramp. But he came into Altoona and built the Blair furnace, and this was another furnace that supplied Altoona with pig iron. This is where the furnace sat, somewhere along this rail line. It's not there anymore. Here's some description of where the furnace sat. Eliza Baker owned a iron ore mining section in Altoona, in East Altoona, in the Greenwood area, called Ore Hill of Altoona, also known as the Baker's Mines. And this is a big mining site where they took the iron ore out. Notice a huge mine, how it's quarried out. It's just a big, that hole's about probably 100 foot deep. But you'll find these all around Huntingdon County. There's tons of these sites around Huntingdon County that mine iron ore. It's always on private property, but it's neat to find. Ore Hill of Altoona. Here's the washers at Ore Hill in Altoona. Notice the steam-powered locomotives backing into the building with their carts. And they had washers in there that would wash the iron ore. Not 100% sure how they did everything in there, but it's really neat.
You mean like people were doing this?
Yeah, people were doing it. And they had some kind of system. They had like washing equipment, and I don't know if they would unload the iron onto a table or something. It would I read about it. They had different techniques and equipment back then for that.
And that's just to knock the dirt and stuff off.
Yeah, the dirt and the clay and everything. And they might even crushed it, had crushers to maybe crush it to certain sizes adequate. This is a really awesome picture at Ore Hill. These are the men the miners. This is their standard dinky track. They would start at the top and they would dig down, take the iron ore. You can see it's everywhere, and they would lay tracks. And this is standard equipment, the dinky cart. They'd pull them with mules or a steam-powered locomotive, and they would take all the iron ore, and then they would move the tracks, pick them up, move them again, reset them. A lot of work just to get the iron ore out of there, but yeah, incredibly hard working people. This is the Elizabeth furnace in Pinecroft. This is in Bellwood. So this was also known as Sabbath Rest Furnace. This was owned by the Bell family in Bellwood. Edward Bell started it, and his sons Martin and John eventually took over it. Here's the ruins today. And the reason why I got its name Sabbath Rest Furnace, you know how we talked about the furnaces had to be run every day? They found a way to bank the fire on Sunday so the workers could rest for the Sabbath. So that's pretty neat. Here's a picture of Elizabeth Furnace painting. Edward Bell, founder of Bellwood. James Martin Bell, his son. Martin was he was the one that developed a way to bank the fire. He was also the inventor of the hot glass system that we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he was one of them. There was some other people in a different country, I think England, but whether or not they were working together, this man introduced the hot blast system to Blair in Huntingdon County. And it went from there. It went all over. It's in the steel industry now. Here's his brother John. Here's the Bell Mansion in Bellwood. I believe that's for sale right now. If anyone has like $500,000 laying around. This is Martin Bell's patent, the hot blast system. It's incredible. He actually got a patent, so he was one of the inventors of it. I'm not sure how a lot of it works, but it looks pretty interesting. This is the Bald Eagle Furnace in Snyder Township, very close to Huntingdon County. This is, do you know Snappy's there? Snappy's off of the Bald Eagle exit. Anyone know Port Matilda? Is that Snappy's?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right across from there's a fire company. Behind the fire company, there's a little creek back in there.
Yes.
This is right along the creek behind the fire company. This is known as the Bald Eagle Furnace. The furnace doesn't stand now. This is what was left of it. This was started by a man named George Gloninger. He was a judge, I believe, in Huntingdon County. George also built forges in Tyrone, and he eventually sold it to the Line and Shorb Group, which Line and Shorb was a big iron-making company, kind of like Cambria Iron. They were a big company that had multiple furnaces, multiple mining sites. But they would eventually take over the Bald Eagle Furnace. And this is the creek behind there. Notice where they cut in for the raceway to get their water. So that's a neat, that's what they did. They would find a creek, they would make a raceway to the water wheel. Here's the raceway. This is a little bit further off to the right. This is the raceway that would run. The water wheel would have sat somewhere right there. This is the ruins of the furnace that's been pushed over. All the rocks are just right there along the hillside. Blue slag all over the property. That
Interesting.
place is littered with blue slag. I found every furnace has different colored slag. Black, green, red, blue, purple. It's just really neat to find the different colors. And I think the reason to that is how it cooled, like the temperatures was, the iron ore, the charcoal, everything they were using and mixed in, and as it cooled, it would color a certain way. But it could have been the iron ore and their charcoal they used there that made it blue. But this is in Huntingdon County. This is the Pennington Banks. This is in Warriors Mark, and this property is extensive, huge iron ore mining site. If anyone knows where the Pennington Banks are, it's in Warriors Mark. Big place where they were mining iron ore rock by the Lion and Shore Group for Bald Eagle furnace. This is so extensive that they would have been sending this iron out to different furnaces all over America. There was a railroad that went there. Here's another. I mean, when I went around the site with a guy named, I think it's Jim Simondale. He's an excavator here in Huntingdon, or where's Mark? He owns a lot of this property, and we drove around for like an hour, and there was just hundreds of pits, underground mine shafts where they were mining. Just it was so extensive. I couldn't believe it. They'd hit water, you know. They would flood out, you know. It was a dangerous job, you know. Here's an old underground mine shaft that caved in. You know, they were going into the ground, and brown hematite. We're almost done here, but I in the book I wrote about the Juniata Mainline Canal and its importance on iron transportation and production. The Juniata Canal was started being built here at 1827, and I think it was completed in 1832. But it came from outside of Harrisburg. It ran to Hollidaysburg to the Canal Basin. From Canal Basin, they would take the canal boats off and put it on rail car, and they would be inclined over the Allegheny Portage Railroad. Very amazing system at the time. This picture is in the Lewistown Narrows. That's really cool. But they would ship iron ore and on these canal boats. That obviously is a passenger boat. I learned a lot about the canal in this. You know, it's really interesting. Here's how they would put the canal boats on the rail cars, and they would pull them over the mountain. If anyone heard of Allegheny Portage Railroad, there was 10 inclines on our side of the Alleghenies, from the bottom of the mountain to the top, and then there was 5 more inclines on the other side, on Cambria's side, that went from the top of Crescent to Johnstown. There are 5 inclines on that side and 5 inclines on our side. Here's incline 10. It starts 6 to 10. 6 is in foot of 10. Actually, yeah, wait. No, sorry. 10 starts in foot of 10, Duncansville. I had it backwards. This would be incline 6. 5 would be on the other side, and it would go down to 1 in Johnstown. So, but this is the old incline that goes up to the Allegheny Portage Railroad. If anyone ever wants some cool history, check out that park. It's definitely worth the trip. They have the old incline house, engine house, where they pulled the cars over the mountain using steam power. And here's some old ruins of one of the steam engine houses along the trail you can walk along. They would pull, when they would go up over the inclines and they'd reach flat sections of the railroad, they would be pulled along by these small locomotives. They had 40 of these along the Allegheny Portage Railroad. Here's the Staple Bend Tunnel, the first railroad tunnel in America. And this is going towards Johnstown. And on the other side would be the very first incline to go down and put back into the canal to Pittsburgh. So from the Duncansville, from this iron ore was coming from the Juniata Canal from Harrisburg to Hollidaysburg, Hollidaysburg on the incline, Allegheny Portage Railroad up to Johnstown and back down in, and they would go back into the canal to go to Pittsburgh. So this is the main transportation route of this pig iron. It went from east to west. Yeah, we had a fun time going in here with the kids. It was like a 2-mile walk to the tunnel and through, and they were miserable on the way back. They were miserable.
Yeah.
It was fun though.
How long is that tunnel?
That's a great question. I think it's, I'm going to say around 2,000, 1,500, 2,000 feet, maybe somewhere around there. I could be wrong. Here is an awesome picture in 1867 of the canal basin in Hollidaysburg. And we have 2 furnaces right in the basin. Here's the canal system coming in from Huntingdon. Here's the historic Hollidaysburg. Notice all the trees are gone, clear cut. This is the canal basin right here. This is where the canal boats would come in. Notice all the structures. I mean, it was an industrial site, lots of forges and foundries. We have the Gaysport furnace on the left. We have the Chimney Rocks furnace on the right. 2 modern hot blast furnaces. They were nicknamed Hollidaysburg 1, Hollidaysburg 2. This was on the Gaisport side. This was known as the poor side of Hollidaysburg. That was known as the wealthy side of Hollidaysburg. That's kind of what they referred it to back then. But if you see the Allegheny Portage Railroad would go up the mountain this way. Now at this time, it would have been the new Portage Railroad. It would actually go around the Allegheny Mountains and link up with the Horseshoe Curve. The Allegheny Portage Railroad closed pretty early. I think 1850s sometime there they closed it, and they went around it, and the Horseshoe Curve was built. Here's a zoomed in on the furnaces. This is the Canal Basin Park in Hollidaysburg. This would have been where Chimney Rock's furnace sat, and you can find slag underneath the grass. This is the site of where Gaisport furnace would have sat in Hollidaysburg. There's a popular bar down there called the Argonne Cafe. Chimney Rocks is above. This is the last furnace in Blair County. It's the Frankstown furnace. This was built in the Frankstown Township. And this is the site of the Frankstown Municipal Building today. This is where the furnace sat. This is a very modern hot blast iron furnace. This is an amazing picture that Emma did. But notice the hot blast system. That's really cool. That's like the best picture that I've ever seen of a hot blast system on a furnace. Look at the mechanical structure. That's what replaced the cold blast water wheel. But yeah, that furnace was 60 feet tall. This is a really cool map. I think it's 1873. They had a rail line that came from Hollidaysburg and ran up towards the furnace right here. Blast furnace. And you had iron mines directly above known as the Frankstown mines. They were all underground mines in an area known today as Brush Mountain in Hollidaysburg. They had some amazing iron there that was owned by the Cambria. Started as the Blair Iron and Coal Company, eventually went to the Cambria Iron Company, and there was such an extensive mining site. They were going underground. They had slope mines that went underground. Some of these mines reached a mile, and they were supplying Cambria iron with a lot of iron ore, even up like some of the mills in in Johnstown early on. Here's one of the old trenches going into a mine that's been closed up. There's one of the quarries on Bald Hill behind Frankstown furnace that supplied the limestone flux. That's everything for Blair County Iron.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. You kept so much up here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for preserving our
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Appreciate that. My
It
pleasure.
Byron.
Thank you. Okay.
You
Thank
might
you.
enjoy
Appreciate
going
that.
to the,
You know, the iron workers